Good evening, I'm Melissa Hekalea, and this is TVB News. The Housing Authority will launch the Report Public Housing Abuse Award next Wednesday. Participants who provide information that leads to the successful recovery of abused units could be awarded up to $3,000. Samantha Lee reports.
In a bid to prevent misuse of public housing, the government announced a report award scheme in the latest policy address. The Housing Authority has now revealed details about the scheme. Except for staff directly employed by the Housing Authority or the Housing Department, any person aged 16 or above can join the award. Participants may report suspected tenancy abuse cases by providing genuine and concrete information to the authorities through various channels, including hotlines and emails. Informants must provide their real names on the reports and will be interviewed by dedicated personnel to verify the accuracy of the information provided. The Housing Authority will provide a certificate of appreciation and offer a maximum cash reward of $3,000 to award participants who provide information that leads to the successful eviction of someone misusing a property. If one unit is being reported by several people, the assessment panel chaired by a directorate officer will examine such complicated cases and make the final decision. This man said $3,000 might not be a great incentive, but he would consider reporting his neighbor, whom he has not seen for a long time, citing that public rental housing should be allocated to the needy. Another resident said she would not betray her neighbors unless she does not know that person or has a bad relationship with him or her. Lawmaker Lam Man Kwong, a committee member of the Housing Authority, thinks the report scheme targets covert cases as standard declarations had previously exposed abuse of public housing. He suggested the report scheme should take privacy issues into account if the information is named on the appreciation certificate. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
The West Kowloon Cultural District Authority has submitted their property development plans to the Yautsemak District Council. The project could offer nearly 2,000 units on a land area of about 20,000 square meters. Mimo Singai reports.
The proposed property development project is located on Austin Road West. The West Kowloon Cultural District Authority hopes to build 7 buildings on roughly 21,000 square meters of land, providing 1,995 units. The buildings will be located opposite West Kowloon Station and near the two private luxury housing developments, the Harborside and the Arch. The new plan includes a total floor area of almost 140,000 square meters, with 20% of the area designated for retail shops and restaurants. The authority will retain 3 pieces of land that are not for construction. It will apply to the Town Planning Board for permission in the first quarter of this year. A surveying professional estimates the development project will bring in over $11 billion for West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. In July last year, the Executive Council conditionally approved the authority to sell residential property to help with financial difficulties. Memos 9, TVB News.
Professor Dennis Low Yuk Ming has taken office as the 9th president of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He pledged to enhance the institution's international standing as well as communication between the governing council and students. Dennis Low met with reporters at the college this morning. He said he's served CUHK for 27 years, calling the institution his second home. He said he's committed to improving the school's international status. Low, a molecular biologist, was an associate dean of medicine at the university. He's also a member of the Chief Executive's Policy Unit Expert Group. He said he'll meet with staff, students, and alumni this week. 2 women were charged under the Aviation Security Ordinance after they allegedly scuffled during a Cathay Pacific Airways flight from Japan to Hong Kong. The flight involved was CX-581, which flew from Sapporo to Hong Kong on Monday night. A Cathay spokesperson said the 2 passengers were engaged in disruptive behavior after the aircraft landed. The cabin crew immediately mediated the conflict and issued a verbal warning to the duo, who were subsequently escorted off the plane by airport security staff and the police. The police said a 32-year-old woman from Hong Kong injured her forehead, while a 60-year-old woman from the mainland complained she had chest pain, but both refused to be hospitalized. At least 126 people have lost their lives in a powerful earthquake that struck Tibet in southwestern China on Tuesday. Over 46,000 affected residents have been resettled, while rescuers continue their work in search of survivors under the rubble. Danny Zhou reports.
Frantic rescue efforts in Tibet's Jakarta city are hampered by winter temperatures that dip to as low as -18 degrees Celsius. Firefighters, police officers and soldiers worked in frigid conditions within the first 72 hours of golden period after the quake. A large number of tents were erected to provide temporary shelters. At least 188 people sustained injuries, and many were transported to hospital by soldiers. At around 9:05 a.m. on Tuesday, a magnitude 6.8 tremor struck Dingzhi County in Jakarta, where the average elevation is around 4,500 meters along the Himalayan border with Nepal. Building debris littered the streets. Thousands of houses were toppled in the barren and sparsely populated region. There were dozens of aftershocks in the epicenter of Tsugo Township. The Quake Relief Department said much of their current work is focused on setting up tents and checking livestock and materials. In Changshu Township, the most severely affected area, all 40 rural houses in the village were crumbled, with some totally collapsed. The Air Force was also deployed as President Xi Jinping called for all-out efforts to minimize casualties. Rescuers pulled out over 400 survivors from the rubble overnight, and electricity has resumed in most surrounding towns and villages. Vice Premier Zhang Guoqing, who arrived at the quake-hit zone earlier, visited quake victims at tent camps and hospitals and inspected ongoing rescue operations. He said heating and supplies must be given to affected residents and stressed post-disaster reconstruction must be accelerated. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
South Korea's court has granted an extension to the arrest warrant for impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. But Yoon's supporters staged a rally on Wednesday to oppose his impeachment near the presidential residence in Seoul. The initial court warrants to detain Yoon and search his residence expired Monday, but a new warrant on Tuesday extended the window for Yoon's detention. The spectacle at the compound follows Yoon's decision last month to impose martial law during a seemingly routine impasse with the opposition, which dominates parliament. Welcome back to TVB News. Facebook and Instagram owner Meta has announced changes to content moderation on Facebook and Instagram, long sought by conservatives. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Facebook and Instagram owner Meta announced it's scrapping its third-party fact-checking program and replacing it with community notes written by users, similar to the model used by Elon Musk's social media platform X. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg acknowledged the changes are in part sparked by political events, including Donald Trump's victory in the US presidential election. Zuckerberg said the recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech, and claimed fact-checkers had been biased.
But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system.
The company said it decided to end the program because expert fact-checkers had their own biases and too much content ended up being fact-checked. Instead, it will pivot to the community notes model that uses crowdsourced fact-checking contributions from users. As part of the transition, Meta will use labels to replace warnings overlaid on posts that forces users to click through. The social media company also said it plans to allow more speech by lifting some restrictions on some topics that are part of mainstream discussion, including immigration and gender. Critics of the policy shift say ending the fact-checking program not only removes a valuable resource for users, but it also provides an air of legitimacy to a popular disinformation narrative that fact-checking is politically biased. Dan Orell, TV News.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump said he would not rule out using military action to take control of Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark, as well as the Panama Canal. Danny Zhou tells us more.
During a press conference held at Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday, Donald Trump brought about the possibility of seizing control of the Panama Canal and the island of Greenland, both of which he said are important for U.S. national security. He did not rule out the use of U.S. military force to secure the two regions when asked by reporters.
I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security.
Trump also blasted former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, who recently passed away, for his handover of the Panama Canal, saying this has given China the opportunity to operate the critical waterway.
The Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion.
In addition to this, Trump questioned the legitimacy of Denmark's claim to Greenland and vowed to tear up Denmark at a very high level if it does not hand sovereignty over Greenland to the U.S. Meanwhile, the U.S. president-elect's son, Donald Jr., flew his family jet to Nuuk, the capital of Greenland, on the same day. Donald Jr. had no meetings planned with government officials and called his visit a personal day trip. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen responded Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders and the island is not for sale. The U.S. is an important ally of Denmark, she said, adding she did not believe Washington will use military or economic power to secure control over Greenland. The Panamanian government on Tuesday reiterated the sovereignty of its canal was non-negotiable. Trump has threatened to make Canada the 51st state of the U.S. in recent days. He escalated his remarks at Tuesday's presser, saying he will use economic force in doing so. Trump's latest remarks prompted Canada's outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to respond on social media. Trudeau said there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
The body of U.S. former President Jimmy Carter will continue to lie in state in Washington after observance in his native Georgia. His funeral will take place on Thursday. Tracy Furness has more.
The funeral procession of former President Jimmy Carter arrived at the U.S. Navy Memorial, where his casket was transferred from a hearse to a horse-drawn caisson. Relatives of the former president joined the funeral procession, walking from the memorial towards the Capitol building. Once at the Capitol, he received a gun salute fired from cannons. A bipartisan delegation of members of Congress were led into the Capitol Rotunda for a short service celebrating Carter's faith, military service and devotion to service, including his hands-on contributions to building homes for those in need through Habitat for Humanity.
To be sure, the years of his presidency were not without international crises or challenges, but his legacy of global leadership is well established. In Asia, he instituted full diplomatic relations with China, which he would later call one of the most historically significant accomplishments of his presidency.
Carter's remains had been lying in repose at the Carter Presidential Center in Atlanta since Saturday, returning to Washington for 3 days of state funeral rites starting Tuesday, culminating in a state funeral Thursday at Washington National Cathedral, where President Joe Biden will deliver a eulogy. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
French far-right leader Jean-Marie Le Pen, known for his fiery rhetoric against immigration, has died at the age of 96. Founder of France's far-right National Front, Le Pen was a polarizing figure in French politics. He was known for his fiery rhetoric against immigration and multiculturalism, which earned him both staunch supporters and widespread condemnation. His controversial statements, including Holocaust denial, led to multiple convictions and strained political alliances. In 2011, his daughter Marine Le Pen rebranded the party to National Rally to shed its bad image and expand its electoral appeal. And back locally, a lawmaker said the government should not allow individuals who have moved overseas to enjoy some local welfare benefits. The government said they have no plans to make any adjustments. In a legislative council meeting today, lawmaker Edward Leung said some overseas Hong Kong people will return to the city for public hospital services. He said such a practice will incur additional public expenditure and the government should prevent it. Secretary for Health Lo Chung-Mao said it's difficult for authorities to keep an eye on the number of emigrated individuals returning to the SAR. He said authorities do not plan to implement an inspection mechanism. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Good night.